welcome to another episode of PropTech Talks. How you doing?
Really good, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Cool. So for those who don't know who you are, and we're going to talk about who you are, we're going to talk about smart spaces. Would you give us a quick intro to yourself?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm Dan Drogman. I'm the CEO and founder of Smart Spaces, smart building operating system deployed across 85 million square feet in 26 countries. Founded the business with my brother Tom 14 years ago. Can't believe how quickly that's gone. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here today.
Cool. Okay, so let's start with your story first. We're gonna look into like you and the sort of origin of smart spaces. We're gonna look at sort of the industry today and potential advice for other entrepreneurs. There's a lot to cover, but sort of right from the beginning, I think your story with Tom is really interesting and completely unique as far as I can tell, at least in the built environment. The fact that you haven't raised funding as well, as far as I know.
That's right, yeah.
So that's obviously unique. Can you give us a little bit of a insight into that whole beginning?
Yeah, certainly. So I think it probably started in the 80s. My dad got us a personal computer, and the personal computer pretty much was only becoming mainstream back then. It was an Olivetti 286. And yeah, my brother and I had to use MS-DOS to access and manipulate the computer. So we got into programming quite early on. And we were always excelled at IT. And I remember being back at high school and I could lock the IT teacher out of the network, change his theme to hot dog theme. Do you remember that red and yellow theme, which is up makes your eyes bleed? We do also naughty things like that. I used to get in a lot of trouble, but I did actually win the respect of the teacher, and I just got straight A in IT, and I was already excelling in that sort of in that skill. But funny enough, when I went to leave school, I went into graphic design because it was the .com boom, and web designers were getting paid an absolute fortune. And I loved design, I loved computers, and was naturally good with computers. So I thought this is the perfect career. So I left school and went straight to UAL, University of Arts London. And I studied a graphics course which had a digital element, but then managed to get onto a degree, which was one of the very first degrees in interactive media. So actually building complex web applications, which had fantastic design, being a design uni, not a engineering university, was great. And we had so much fun on the crazy stuff and exhibitions we used to put on. But I was such a geek, I even ended up wiring up the UAL's first Wi-Fi network. So Wi-Fi had just come out in the market. And I ended up installing that on as a side note. And I genuinely think that contributed towards my grade. They somehow managed to give me
really?
Because I probably wasted some time doing that and not actually doing my coursework. And so, so I left in 2003, so graduated in 2003, and the .com crash had already happened. I think Amazon was one of the very few that made it through. And so salaries went from over 100k for a web designer to 16k was my first job. And so what I learned pretty quickly is that you've got to provide a lot of value in order to get paid highly. And so that meant that we ended up building some real complex applications at my first job. So it was in commercial property marketing. So we had clients like Mackay Securities, which was our landlord before they got acquired by Workspace. And Knight Frank was also another client. Donaldson's was another client. And Knight Frank in particular, we ended up building the data rooms, similar to a Drooms, but back in the day. For the sale of hotels. And so you'd have these beautiful, well-designed, like interactive websites with virtual tours, a brochure, all the fantastic photography, but also linked to a data room where you had all the documents to do your due diligence in order to purchase the hotel. And we would track what every single user would do and give that to the asset owner or the person selling the asset, a dashboard where they could see exactly who's most interested and who's accessed the most amount of files for the longest amount of time. And they could judge time wasters versus people who are genuinely interested in buying the asset. And they ended up being quite successful. We've done quite a few projects for hotels, and we've done similar applications for serviced offices. And in about 2009, I approached the owners of the company for an equity. I felt that I'd built this department up so it could stand on its own 2 feet. And in that time, I'd hired my brother. And actually hiring my brother was quite a funny thing because he'd done the same similar course to myself, UAL as well. But he was working as an electrician part-time whilst at university, and he was earning so much money as an electrician, it wasn't really worth him coming in for 16k to help out on the web development side. And so he resisted it. But then actually at the dinner table at mum and dad's, and we still lived at home at that time. And we'd have a dinner table conversation. And I'd say, look, you need to join us. It'd be great if you could come in and help us out. He said, look, I've had enough of being on the tools. And it just so happened I had some maternity leave cover that was required. So I got him in for this maternity leave cover. And I set aside 2 weeks worth of work for him to work on. And I gave that work to him. And the next day he goes, I've done that. I went, what? Done it. So I checked his work, and it was better quality than my work. 2, it was like 10 times as quick. And I pretty much in that moment thought, there's a business here. If you can get things complete that quick, we can make a profit, because we can quote X for a project and you can deliver it in that time. And so I was really infused. And that is at that point where I went to go to meet the owners of the company and said, look, I want an equity position because I want, I feel I can really grow this and take it to the next level. And they done the best thing they could ever done and said, no, otherwise I'd still be there now. So it's quite scary. Really. And then, do you know what? I was like, we were only a small firm based in Covent Garden. Absolutely loved the 2 owners of the company. I owe them a lot. And they just took it. They said, look, Dan, we always knew you was going to do this one day, and we don't want to clip your wings. We wish you best of luck. And they even was good to let us take a couple of clients with us.
Really?
So we continued to do a number of projects for the clients that transferred over, and that really helped us because that's mission critical on day one.
That's really cool. I was actually listening to a podcast this morning, and they said you don't really want to hire entrepreneurs because there's 2 things that'll happen. A, let's say they used to run a business and now they're being hired as an employee. A, they're going to constantly negotiate for more salary or for equity because that's what they're kind of used to, and they feel they really deserve that, which is annoying. Or B, they will get their confidence because they actually are really, really good, and they will kind of get their confidence back, and they're going to leave and take as much of your business with them as they leave. I, unfortunately, listening to that, kind of fell into that category a little bit. I feel a little bit guilty, but it's interesting. This very typical, pattern there, which is that an entrepreneur sort of has something within them and they really want to eventually build something. So it's just a matter of when, really, not if.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's something around like doing something better. Like if you know you can do it better and you have 100% confidence. And we were a mixed agency. We still done print work, we still done video work, and that was all a distraction from our core web development we were doing. So we could see that if we just focused on that and not the other things, we'd do better. And so knowing that we could do better meant we would transcend and go on to our own thing.
So one thing that a lot of people talk about in the industry now, and we're going to get to more like the real estate side, but I think there's just one thing, even just around startups and real estate startups, and it's around just being profitable, okay? And a lot of people are thinking, you need to invest to grow, which, eating into the runway doesn't matter. That whole attitude, that very typical, and also, of course it works, that VC attitude. But I'd imagine you guys probably, you guys had to think about cash flow more because you didn't have that big investment like a VC. You had to build everything yourselves. So what's your take on that? On how being profitable from the beginning, how did that sort of affect your growth at Smart Spaces to be 70 people today now?
Yeah, certainly. Well, we had to make a lot of sacrifices. I certainly lived out of my savings for the first year. And the difference was, I suppose, when we started, we were coders for hire. So before we come up with Smart Spaces. And so we could price jobs like a construction company where we know what our profit would be. We'd say, look, this is going to take this amount of hours to do this project. We can make this amount of profit. And we both would be coding at that point. And actually, our first employee was another software developer to increase that bandwidth. And that's quite an interesting story on its own because we were actually just across the road from this office, our original office, and we were paying our rent by writing the meeting room booking system and billing system for Target Space, who was our landlord. And so again, we weren't paying for that space. We was getting very, very nice space in the previous 70 Sumeri acts. And we hired our first web developer and an Italian guy, Roman guy, and he didn't speak a word of English. And it was hilarious. We'd done the whole interview with a laptop, and he would write code and I would evaluate it, and then he would write a question and we'd respond. And the worst thing ever was he learned English from me. And so he's got the most fucked up Roman stroke Essex accent you've ever heard in your life. And when he comes to see me, I just so embarrassed. I'm like, I can't believe I've done this to you. I've actually recommended that he has some proper English lessons. But so anyway, that's a side point. Coming back to the profitability thing, so that's how we done it. So then once we got enough money to get another employee, and we just hired, and we weren't in a rush because, you know, we're young, we felt like we had loads of time ahead of us, we were quite relaxed. So we just took our time, and when we got really lucky, you know, all of our success has been down to doing a good job and caring. You know, our values are we're caring, conscientious, we're passionate, enthusiastic, and we're personal and respectful. And I think being passionate about coding means you enjoy it, which means you do a good job, and we care. So we are always going to get the product to the place where you need it. Right. And so doing that, we just won some fantastic projects. You know, we built landlord-occupant, which was Marriott's European booking system for conferencing. You can already book your next conference for it. You can actually pay online with your card. And bear in mind, I built that in 2012. We built midpoint.com, which is a peer-to-peer foreign exchange, which had a netting algorithm, would actually net all the currency matches you have on the platform to find the least liquidity trade, and then trade that to close the book and pay everyone out. And it was fantastically complex, and it's quite funny, that business, we listed it on the TSX Venture Exchange in Canada, and I sat on the board for years and never went to Canada. I've never been to Canada, which is crazy to be a board director, never stepped foot there. But that was quite a funny one, because we made this matching engine, nets out all these currencies, and we thought we were geniuses. We thought we'd rewrite the banking system. And then when we worked out that if we do the liquidity trade and go to the bank for £10,000, the amount of spread they take on that versus giving them the whole book, it was cheaper just to give them the whole book and not use the netting algorithm. And so we were like, oh shit, we didn't think this through. And obviously we're just two naive programmers, and finance wasn't our background. We were actually way more comfortable in real estate. And I suppose at that point, we were losing our minds. We built a recruitment platform, which was really cool. We built 2 huge watch e-commerce websites. One of them still live today. The other got acquired by the famous Chrono 24 company. And so but we were losing our minds. I think if we didn't have that late 20s, early 30s stamina, it got to a point where we were trying to meet deadlines, and my brother and I were sleeping under the desk, then getting up and programming again. The quality of the work was suffering. And at the same time, you know, I think I started not to enjoy it anymore. And I could see my brother was on the brink of having a breakdown, trying to deliver. And so we really had to have a think about all the things we've built. We've built so much. We've built this e-commerce. We've built the peer-to-peer foreign exchange. We've built landlord-occupant. We've built some chartered surveying software. And we looked at all of the products and tried to work out which one we enjoyed the most and was most passionate for, and which one had the biggest market. And we've just built this product called Smart Rewards for shopping centres, which gamified shopping centres, where if you go to the cold zone, so maybe the third floor of a shopping centre that doesn't get the footfall, has a cheaper rent, would give you extra points. And it was like witchcraft. At that point, the smartphone had become just the phone, and grannies were using this in the shopping centres to go and get their points and go and get free discounts and so on. We also had an OCR feature in there, so they could get receipts and take a photograph, and they'd get a point for every pound. And they actually started forging extra zeros on the end of the receipts, and our system picked this up. We took it to the client, and they went, let them get the points. It's brilliant because they can only spend them in the centre, and we're getting the money back. So let's continue. And we built that, and all of our office clients, because we're still doing the meter and bookings and the billing systems for offices, they were like, we want this for offices. Like, we want to be able to have that 2-way communication channel with every person that uses our office. So I was like, well, we could certainly adapt it. And we adapted it for a business park called Croxley Park for Columbia Threadneedle. And I remember going into the sales pitch, and the marketing team were there, and they were struggling to get budget for the next phase of the marketing. And I come up with the app, and I told them exactly how much it's cost. They went, done. And when we come out, the marketing guy went, you bastard. He goes, I've been trying to get money out of them for ages for my next phase of marketing. You turn up and get this fee to do this app. And I was like, yeah, it's great, isn't it? And we built the app, and I'm really proud. You know, it's still live today. What's that, 8 years, something like that?
Right.
And so really cool. And then the next client was GPE. We deployed the exact same platform, but not a campus-led app, one dedicated to a building. And funny enough, we built the first one for 240 Blackfriars, had it all there working, ready to go, and we were really excited to launch this. And we pretty much made our minds up at that point, this is what we're going to do. This is what I was most excited about. And GPE sold 240, and we said, oh, can we get intro to the new owners? And we're like, no, we want to hold this back for ourselves. And I did totally respect that because they made the investment, but it just meant we were delayed. And then we done it again for 55 Wells Street, and they sold that. We're like, oh, please let us launch it. And then finally we launched it at 160 Old Street and the Hickman, and the Hickman achieved the world's first platinum smart score rating,
Really?
which is great. And then again, really proud to continue to develop a GPE workplace app, which has just gone to the next level.
Yeah.
The feedback, we got feedback on the app the other day from a tenant saying life changing.
Yeah.
So yeah, very happy.
And so really interesting that transition from, I guess you're like almost like a tech agency or a tech consultant.
Yeah.
And I guess having so many shiny objects, and you just had to pick what is the best one that we can actually scale. So you've definitely made the right choice.
Yeah, definitely. And it comes down to things like, so our purpose at Smart Spaces is optimizing environments for people and planet. So the purpose is far greater than us. And I think, everyone's looking to make a difference, especially when it comes to sustainability, but also enjoy life and have things at a fingertip that are available in a smartphone, AirPods, your watch, and so on. And so we love that. We love the fact that it affects the physical environment. We're merging digital and physical. And I think that helps us attract software developers because they love that they're working with IoT, and the things they do in the digital world affect the physical world. But then the really good thing is the market size. The number of properties far outweighed the number of chartered surveyor firms that we could sell our software to. The banks had the whole FX thing rigged anyway, so we'd struggle to make money that way. So we certainly chose the right product. Haven't looked back.
Amazing. So I guess looking at the industry today, a few funny dynamic components to it. Seems like a lot of commercial landlords are, basically they're struggling a little bit. Their occupancy is a bit down. The interest rates are high. They want to make a margin. There's not too many other ways to now get around it other than I guess technology is a serious way to stay competitive. It seems the industry is much more nuanced today than it was 10 years ago. What would be, I suppose, your advice to executives who still want to stay competitive? Because some are doing really well and some are, not struggling is the right word, but some are, really considering how to make this business that worked 10, 20 years ago, how to still make it work today. Of course, there's new regulations as well. What would be your advice to an executive today?
Yeah, certainly. Well, I think, the pandemic accelerated something that was going to happen anyway. Fridays were already at only 30% occupancy in a lot of the buildings we were working on. We're now seeing actually globally on our platform that the UK is starting to leave the drive with a return to the office with far more superior occupancy than the US. And actually Monday now has got critical mass, which is fantastic. But really what it is, it's, technology has also automated a lot of processes in big banks and in law firms, so they don't need the headcount they needed previously. So big 1 million square foot offices like HSBC at Canary Wharf, that's not required anymore. So the requirements are smaller. But most importantly, back in the day, you'd do a 15-year lease and just throw them the keys and come see me when your lease renewal comes up. You need to be far more customer focused. And that's what really helped building Marriott meeting rooms, because we knew how hotels had to operate to provide unrivaled customer service. And we were just bringing that to the landlord. And so by deploying a platform like Smart Spaces, we create a two-way connection with every single individual that uses the building. Previously, the only person to talk to the landlord was the person paying the bill, or like the head of HR maybe, or head of facilities, or the head of the office manager, who quite a terse person to work with anyway. So they never really got the real feedback. Now you've got a feedback loop with every single individual in the building. You can truly see how your asset performs. You can get instant occupancy analysis, and you can be proactive. If you start seeing that one of your units has terrible occupancy, why don't you approach them and see if they want to break their lease? You can repurpose the space and give it to someone who really wants it. Conversely, someone's overusing the space, they're at 160% utilization, lease some more space, move them to another building. And actually, landlords like GPE have been fantastic in managing to move large tenants building to building, and using the app, we've managed to have mobile access in their old premises, move over to their new premises with no downtime. So I think that's the key. It's customer service, and you're just running a much more service-led business where you need to be close to your customer.
It's really interesting because real estate before it's maybe unfair to say it was an easy business, but it wasn't one where you really had to be close with your customer. You know, you build it, you're done. And now they're sort of feeling what a lot of other business models feel, where you have to focus on your customer. And I think that's what, you know, businesses expect, what people expect. And it makes complete sense now why solutions like smart spaces sort of give people that standard of living that you expect in like 21st century. And that's how the occupiers and the landlords can actually have that communication. It makes complete sense, pretty cool. So the other, I guess, thing that a lot of landlords are now considerate of, and I know, you know, labor has gone into power, which means ESG regulations are potentially going to be stronger than their conservative counterpart. That's just the UK. Everywhere around Europe, everywhere around the world, you know, by the day, more ESG conscious than the day before. What can be done, I guess, to even increase the value of these assets, just from a tax perspective, a energy efficiency perspective? How should that problem be approached?
Yes, there's a multitude of ways. I think, you know, soon when you sell an asset, you're going to have to provide the occupancy data as well. It's not just going to be how long these leases last and when the renewal dates are. They're definitely going to be looking at the occupancy as well, because they know that someone still might break that lease and you might forfeit on the rent, for instance. And so I think having that data is paramount. I think from a sustainability angle, the best success we've had most recently is in benchmarking. And we've benchmarked building to building before, but it's been a bit naughty in terms of the client might have selected a really weak building to be benchmarked against to make them look great in the marketing. But more recently on the tenant side, you know, comparing tenant B to tenant A, not necessarily saying who it is, but saying a floor of the same size in the same building as you has this energy profile, and you have this energy profile, and these are the elements you need to change in order to improve it. And that makes people change because they do feel slightly ashamed. And also, if you put pounds and pence against that, and they can see how much their peers are paying for energy in the same building, can be hugely impactful. And we've completely seen the behaviour change until the two floors are operating in line with the best floor. And when it comes to things like neighbours ratings, that's the only way you're going to sustain a good rating.
I'd imagine that works really well with students. Might be completely wrong, but I don't imagine as a student, there's almost like, it feels like a gamification of you know, you're looking at how your room is doing. The students today are more, you know, sustainability conscious than ever before. Yeah, I know smart spaces isn't necessarily moving into PBS.
Watch this space.
Yet.
Yeah,
watch it. But do you think that, was that maybe what you were thinking about when you were talking about it, or is it more offices?
No, it's certainly offices. So we're only deployed across office and large mixed-use schemes at the moment. So some of our schemes have an element of residential, office, retail, but we haven't done any dedicated residential or dedicated student accommodation yet. But yeah, watch this space. But yeah, it certainly would work for both. And, you know, the way you reward people might be slightly different. Obviously, in the office, they're paying for their own energy, so it's a direct saving on their costs. For students, if that's bundled up within the rent, it'll be like a cashback scheme. You know, it could even be a free pizza, I'd imagine. You could do a whole host of things.
So the last question is more, you know, we've talked about a little bit of advice to executives, you know, things that they're concerned about and how to get around them. I thought that also the idea of even just comparing to your neighbor, sort of using human psychology to get like a big result, I think that's genius. But now also for the entrepreneur side, the startup founders, maybe they're getting their first $1 million in revenue a year, maybe they're scaling to 10 million in revenue a year. What makes some of these businesses scale really quickly and become really successful, and other businesses, they never really seem to just get off the ground? They're sort of treading water. I'm really curious, what actually can make a business, you know, grow quickly and just become successful from your perspective?
Yeah, certainly. Well, for us, it's all about the customer and the product. That's how we do it. There's no magic or secret. It's all making the best product and just listening to the customer and delivering. But for others, you know, great tactics are taking investment from someone who's already in the industry. So if you take investment from one of the big property management companies like JLL, CBRE, and they can open their contact book and database to you and give you an intro, that's huge. And so that's going to give you really rapid growth. So I think those two certainly work. And then I think there are some clever, you know, I always love the channel, the BIM. Like how they've managed to grow that to the number of followings just blows my mind. It's great. It's because it's great content. But if you could leverage social media in that way, and we're always trying to think at Smart Spaces how we can come up with something similar. It's very difficult with a B2B brand, but I think it can be cracked, and we are trying to invest in that space to leverage that. But yeah, I think, and also thought leadership, giving back and giving some of your secrets away can help, because then people get trust and know you can do the job and deliver.
I think one quite subtle but really serious sign for this, just to give context, which at PropTech Connect, we've spoken to over 1,000 founders to talk about who should be speaking on stage and for sponsorships, or to loads of executives as well. And I was thinking there's like a clear difference between the successful ones and the not successful ones.
Yeah.
And the successful ones have almost this abundance proactives just generating outward force. It's so hard to it's subtle, but it's so clear.
Yeah.
And, some are more charming than it's not like charm, or it's not like brains, or it's not like looks, clearly.
No, exactly.
It's
challenge in all those areas.
But it seems that some have this almost like outward generating force, and they don't mind getting on stage and sharing the secrets. They're just giving the information. They're not even insecure about it. Versus those, how many times do you hear someone says, I've got this great idea, but it's like, mate, I'm not going to steal your idea. You know what I mean? Or when you sort of just know within yourself, you're just providing, and just adding value. I think it's from what I found, but it's a question I've always found really interesting.
Yeah, well, I think it's all about execution. Like the thing that sort of upsets me is like how I can have someone come to me with an idea for a feature, and they feel that just by sharing their idea, they should have like an equity stake in Smart Spaces, and and I'm like, that is the easy bit, is the idea, and certainly it's the execution. But what we do like, separate to that, is when customers come to us and go, look, Dan, we've got this problem. How do we solve it? We think we can automate this process. And actually, it's one of the new things we've just built on our platform, which is all buildings have cycle amenity, and cycle amenity can be like 10% of your lettable space. But a lot of times that kind of scale, it doesn't get used to that extent. And that's cost you a lot of money to create that kind of space. And so we developed a solution. We looked at many solutions, and we've got some hybrid solutions as well. We looked at, monitoring the bike spaces and scooter spaces with CCTV, and you could see how many bikes are there and what your occupancy ratios are. And you could use that data to go back to planners to say, look, we need less, or in some buildings, sweat the asset harder, in some more legacy buildings. We also looked at pressure switches on the stands themselves and the racks. Actually, where we ended up, we built a new solution, borrowing from the retail industry on RFID tags. So Uniqlo will tag every item of clothing, and they know their inventory across the shop. They also know who stole a jumper and so on. And so we thought, well, we like that because CCTV and the pressure switches don't know whose bike it is, and they don't know which tenant or occupier it is. And you'll have someone, some very wealthy individuals that might work for a law firm who bring their bike in and are commuting every day, and then one day decide to go home and just leave the bike in the basement. And over time, that's eating up space. And so we developed a solution with tags where we place the tags on bikes, and we track the tags around the building. And so we know exactly where your bike is. We can show you exactly how many spaces there are, and we can tell you if your bike's left the building or entered the building. And now our clients that are looking to maybe avoid having to fit out as much space in the future can avoid that through this, showing this data and sharing this data with the planners. But also the legacy buildings where they haven't got enough cycle amenity, they can get rid of those bikes that have just been sitting there for 5. And some of our landlord clients are very generous. They'll let you store up to 5 bikes, but at least they know those bikes belong to someone who's paying them a rent. It's not just some old junk that someone left there. We've also applied that to the lockers as well. So we give you full analytics. So that sweaty gym kit that's been left there for a long time, and it's no longer an issue. But what's really nice is we're rewarding the people that do use it every day. So if you use this every day or 4 days minimum, we'll give you a dedicated locker in our app. And so you can leave your stuff there as long as you like, because you're using the building all the time. You're a VIP. If you only use it ad hoc, once a month, you've got 2 weeks to use that locker. And after 2 weeks, we'll send you a notification. And if you don't unlock it, we'll clear the locker out. And so yeah, I think it's a really nice way to sweat the asset. And the way that come around was through a client coming to us, explaining the issue, and us going off and trying a whole variety of solutions and coming up with the one we thought was best suited.
I mean, you guys are, there's client focus, and then there's literally building solutions. But
yeah,
I mean, that is pretty cool. And it's unbelievable how, I think a lot of asset owners today probably still don't know how much they can get out of an asset. So there's probably so much hidden value that, you know, in just looking at a few things, improving the space, getting a few percentage points out on multiple assets, you don't realize how much is actually on the table. Definitely. Until they come to you and ask, can it be built?
Yeah, well, it's just all been sitting and residing on PCs in the facilities manager's office, stored in an engineering format, which is hardly digestible for the average property manager, asset manager. And by lifting and shifting this into the cloud, processing, normalizing it, putting it into an insightful dashboard, the value is tremendous.
Fantastic. I think that's about it, all we have time for. Thank you very much for doing the podcast, and looking forward to seeing you in September.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me. And yeah, really excited for PropTech Connect. So if you haven't bought your ticket, make sure you buy one. It'll be worth it. Trust me. Thanks.